There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from loving someone who drains you. You finish a phone call with your mother and feel hollowed out. You leave dinner with an old friend and can't shake the tightness in your chest. You attend a family gathering and spend the entire drive home replaying conversations, wondering why you feel smaller than when you arrived. This isn't the fatigue of a long day. It's the weight of relationships that take more than they give, that demand pieces of you without offering anything in return. Most of us were raised on the belief that family is forever, that loyalty means endurance, that walking away makes you selfish or cold. We carry guilt like a second skin, convinced that if we just tried harder, communicated better, or loved more patiently, everything would fix itself. But what if the problem isn't your effort? What if the healthiest thing you can do is leave? The ancient Stoics understood something we've forgotten, that preserving your peace isn't optional. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca built their philosophy on a foundation of personal sovereignty, the recognition that you cannot control other people, only your response to them. They taught that sometimes the most courageous act isn't staying, it's knowing when to walk away. This article explores 8 Stoic principles that reveal when a relationship has crossed the line from challenging to toxic, and why protecting yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. The pressure to maintain family bonds regardless of their cost isn't new, but it's intensified in modern culture. Social media glorifies family unity while hiding the dysfunction behind curated photos. Self-help culture preaches forgiveness without acknowledging that some relationships are fundamentally unsafe. According to a 2023 study published in the Journal of Family Psychology, approximately 27% of adults report being estranged from at least one family member, yet the stigma around these decisions remains crushing. People who set boundaries with family members report higher levels of shame than those who distance themselves from friends or romantic partners, despite experiencing similar or greater levels of harm. The Stoics approached relationships with clear-eyed pragmatism. They valued virtue, reason, and tranquility above social obligation. Epictetus, who was born a slave and knew intimately what it meant to have no choice, taught that true freedom comes from distinguishing between what you can control and what you cannot. You cannot control whether your father respects you. You cannot control whether your sister takes responsibility for her actions. You cannot control whether your childhood friend grows into someone you no longer recognize. But you can control whether you continue exposing yourself to harm. Walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you recognized a fundamental incompatibility between who you're becoming and who they demand you remain. The Stoics understood that your obligations to yourself, to your growth, your peace, your integrity sometimes outweigh your obligations to others. This isn't selfishness. It's the recognition that you cannot pour from an empty cup, that sacrifice without reciprocity isn't noble, and that some people will drain you dry if you let them. You've said no 3 times, 4 times. You've explained your limits calmly, then firmly, then with frustration creeping into your voice. It doesn't matter. They push anyway, framing your boundaries as negotiable suggestions rather than firm requirements. Maybe it's a parent who shows up unannounced despite repeated requests for advance notice. Maybe it's a sibling who shares your private information after you explicitly ask them not to. Maybe it's a friend who makes jokes at your expense, then tells you you're too sensitive when you object. Boundary violations aren't accidents when they happen repeatedly. They're choices that communicate something clear. Your needs matter less than their preferences. The Stoics taught that respect is the foundation of any relationship worth maintaining. Without it, connection becomes a power struggle where one person continually yields and the other continually takes. This dynamic doesn't improve with time. It calcifies. Consider what happens in your body when you interact with someone who disrespects your boundaries. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing becomes shallow. You choose your words carefully, anticipating resistance. This isn't connection, it's hypervigilance. You're not relating to them. You're managing them. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, visualizing potential obstacles, becomes an exhausting necessity rather than a philosophical exercise. You prepare for conflict because conflict is inevitable. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that chronic boundary violations create similar stress responses to other forms of psychological trauma. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between someone yelling at you and someone repeatedly ignoring your stated needs. Both register as threats. Both trigger your body's protective mechanisms. The difference is that with overt aggression, the harm is visible. With boundary violations, you're often left doubting yourself, wondering if you're overreacting or being unreasonable. Walking away from someone who won't respect your boundaries isn't giving up. It's recognizing that a relationship without mutual respect is performance, not partnership. The Stoics would ask, what virtue is there in maintaining a connection that requires you to betray yourself? Where is the wisdom in teaching someone that your no means nothing? You cannot force respect, but you can refuse to accept disrespect. Sometimes the most powerful response is absence. You haven't heard from them in months. Then your phone rings at midnight. They're in trouble, financial, emotional, legal, medical. The details vary, but the pattern doesn't. They need you urgently, desperately, and temporarily. You drop everything. You offer money, time, emotional labor, practical support. The crisis passes. They disappear again until the next emergency arrives. This isn't a relationship. It's a resource extraction operation where you're the resource. The Stoics understood the difference between genuine need and weaponized helplessness. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of helping others, but he also recognized that some people use your generosity as a substitute for their own responsibility. When every interaction is a crisis that only you can solve, you're not being a good friend or family member. You're being used. Pay attention to what happens when you have needs. When you're going through something difficult, do they show up? Or do your problems somehow become about them? Your cancer diagnosis reminds them of their own health anxiety? Your job loss triggers a lengthy monologue about their career frustrations. Your grief becomes the backdrop for their inability to handle difficult emotions. Crisis-driven relationships are fundamentally unbalanced. One person is always in need, the other is always in service. The exhaustion this creates isn't just about the time or resources you invest. It's about the psychological burden of being someone's emergency contact, but never their daily choice. You exist in their life as a tool, pulled out when needed and forgotten when not. The ancient Stoics practiced sympathia, the recognition of our interconnectedness and mutual obligation. But interconnection requires mutuality. When the flow is consistently one way, the connection is an illusion. Consider keeping a simple record for 1 month. When do they contact you, and why? If the overwhelming majority of interactions involve them needing something from you, you have data, not just feelings. This isn't about keeping score in the petty sense. It's about recognizing patterns that your love or loyalty might be obscuring. Walking away from a crisis-driven relationship creates space for connections where you can be a whole person, not just a solution to someone else's problems. Asterisk. You started therapy. You set a boundary. You changed careers, ended a destructive habit, or discovered something about yourself that shifted your perspective. Their response isn't curiosity or support. It's resistance, mockery, or sabotage. Suddenly, your growth is framed as betrayal. You're too good for them now. You've changed. You're being influenced by people who don't know you like they do. The Stoics believed that the pursuit of wisdom and virtue was life's highest purpose. Epictetus taught that we should welcome challenges and changes that help us grow. But what happens when the people closest to you view your growth as a threat? When your healing makes them uncomfortable because it highlights their stagnation? When your boundaries expose the dysfunction they'd prefer to keep invisible? This dynamic appears frequently in families where one person begins addressing generational trauma or breaking destructive patterns. The family system has found equilibrium, however unhealthy. When you change, you destabilize that equilibrium. You're no longer playing your assigned role, the caretaker, the scapegoat, the mediator, the one who absorbs everyone else's dysfunction so they don't have to face it. Your growth forces them to confront their own choices, and rather than do that difficult work, they pressure you to shrink back to your former size. Research in family systems theory, particularly the work of Murray Bowen, demonstrates that families unconsciously resist change in individual members to maintain homeostasis. This resistance can be subtle forgetting your achievements, changing the subject when you discuss your progress, or consistently finding problems with the positive changes you're making. It can also be overt direct criticism, withdrawal of affection, or explicit demands that you go back to how you used to be. The Stoic response isn't to convince them that your growth is good. It's to recognize that you cannot control their reaction, only your commitment to becoming who you're meant to be. Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Walking away from people who punish your growth is daring to choose yourself. It's refusing to stay small so others can stay comfortable. They hurt you. You name the harm. They apologize quickly, effusively, sometimes tearfully. You feel relief. Maybe this time things will change. Then the same behavior happens again. You bring it up. They're offended that you're still holding on to the past. They remind you they already apologized. They question why you can't just move on. The apology, you realize, was never about accountability. It was about ending the conversation. The Stoics valued sincerity and self-examination. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal where he constantly questioned his own motives and actions. True accountability requires that kind of internal work. It means examining why you caused harm, understanding the impact, and changing the behavior. A real apology doesn't just acknowledge the past. It demonstrates commitment to a different different future. Watch what happens after the apology. Do they ask questions to understand how their behavior affected you? Do they take concrete steps to ensure it doesn't happen again? Or do they rush through the apology to return to business as usual, expecting the magic words, "I'm sorry," to erase the consequences of their actions? Performative apologies are relationship shortcuts. They give the appearance of accountability without requiring actual change. Consider the difference between "I'm sorry you feel that way" and "I'm sorry I did that. I understand why it hurt you, and here's what I'm going to do differently." The first centers the apologizer's discomfort and subtly blames you for your reaction. The second acknowledges harm, accepts responsibility, and commits to change. If you're consistently receiving the first type of apology, you're in a relationship with someone who wants the comfort of resolution without the discomfort of transformation. Clinical psychologist Dr. Harriet Lerner, author of Why Won't You Apologize?, identifies non-apologies as a form of emotional manipulation that maintains power imbalances in relationships. When someone refuses to truly apologize, they're refusing to acknowledge that they're capable of causing harm. This keeps you in a position of either accepting mistreatment or being framed as unforgiving. Walking away from someone who won't genuinely apologize is refusing to participate in that false choice. You remember the conversation clearly. You were sitting at the kitchen table when they said it, and the words landed like a punch. Now, weeks later, you bring it up. They look at you with genuine confusion or theatrical shock or carefully calibrated hurt. "I never said that. You're remembering wrong. You're too sensitive. You're making things up." You begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you are being too sensitive. Gaslighting, the systematic denial of someone's reality to make them question their own perception, is one of the most insidious forms of psychological abuse. The Stoics emphasized the importance of clear perception and rational thought. Epictetus taught that we should trust our own observations while remaining open to correction through reasoned dialogue. But gaslighting isn't dialogue. It's domination disguised as disagreement. The pattern is recognizable once you know what to look for. They deny saying or doing things you clearly remember. They trivialize your feelings by calling you dramatic, crazy, or oversensitive. They counter your concerns by shifting focus to your supposed flaws. They claim everyone else agrees with them, isolating you from alternative perspectives. Over time, you stop trusting yourself. You second-guess your memories, your feelings, your judgment. This isn't accidental. It's strategic. What makes gaslighting particularly damaging in family relationships is that these people often have decades of history with you. They know your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, your past mistakes. They can weaponize that knowledge with surgical precision. You've always been too emotional. Remember when you were wrong about X? You're probably wrong about this too. Everyone in the family thinks you're overreacting. Whether these statements are true becomes irrelevant. The goal is to make you question everything. Dr. Robin Stern, author of The Gaslight Effect, notes that gaslighting thrives in relationships where the victim values the relationship more than they trust themselves. The solution isn't learning better communication techniques. It's recognizing that you cannot have a healthy relationship with someone who refuses to acknowledge your reality. Walking away from a gaslighter is an act of self-trust. It's choosing your sanity over their approval. You visit them because you should, not because you want to. You answer their calls with a sense of dread. You help them not from genuine desire, but from suffocating obligation. When you think about them, the dominant emotion isn't affection or warmth, it's duty, guilt, or exhaustion. The relationship continues not because it adds value to your life, but because ending it feels unthinkable. The Stoics made a crucial distinction between duty and mindless obligation. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about his responsibilities as emperor, father, and citizen, but he approached these roles with conscious choice and philosophical clarity. He asked himself what he owed to others and why. He didn't simply accept obligations without examination. When a relationship has degraded to pure obligation, you're no longer choosing it. You're just enduring it. Consider what happens when you imagine your life without this person in it. Do you feel relief? A weight lifting? The possibility of breathing more freely? These responses carry information. Your body and emotions are telling you something your sense of obligation is trying to override. The Stoics taught that we should listen to our internal responses, examine them rationally, and act according to virtue, which includes the virtue of honoring your own well-being. The guilt that keeps obligation-based relationships alive is often rooted in conditioning rather than ethics. You were taught that family is forever, that blood is thicker than water, that you owe your parents or siblings your loyalty regardless of how they treat you. But the Stoics would ask, what kind of virtue is there in maintaining a relationship that harms you? Where is the wisdom in prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own peace? True duty considers context, reciprocity, and impact. Research from relationship psychologist Dr. Terry Orbuch shows that relationships sustained primarily by obligation have significantly higher rates of resentment, lower life satisfaction, and worse health outcomes than relationships based on genuine connection. Obligation without affection becomes a breeding ground for bitterness. You start counting everything you do for them while noticing everything they don't do for you. This isn't love. It's scorekeeping born from imbalance. Walking away from an obligation-based relationship isn't abandoning responsibility. It's recognizing that a relationship worth having must be one you actively choose, not one you merely tolerate. You've explained how their behavior affects you. You've been specific, giving examples, and describing the emotional consequences. They respond by explaining their intentions. I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to help. You're taking it wrong. No matter how clearly you describe the impact, they redirect the conversation to their intentions, as if good intentions erase harmful outcomes. The Stoic principle of examining consequences rather than just intentions is crucial here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." But he also emphasized the importance of examining the actual effects of our actions in the world. Intentions matter, but impact matters more. When someone consistently prioritizes defending their intentions over acknowledging their impact, they're telling you that their self-image is more important than your experience. This pattern creates an impossible dynamic. You cannot be heard because they cannot listen. Any attempt to express hurt is framed as an attack on their character. Rather than the conversation being about what happened and how to prevent it from happening again, it becomes about defending themselves and managing your perception of them. You're left comforting them for the pain they caused you, reassuring them that you don't think they're a bad person, that you understand they didn't mean it. The original issue never gets addressed. Think about how this manifests in daily interactions. You tell your mother that her comments about your weight hurt you. She responds by talking about how she worries about your health, how society is cruel, how she's only trying to protect you. Your actual hurt gets buried under her justifications. You tell your brother that he embarrassed you in front of your friends. He reminds you about his social anxiety, about how hard social situations are for him, about how you should know him well enough to not take it personally. Again, your experience disappears under his explanation. Clinical research on effective apologies and accountability consistently shows that acknowledging impact is the necessary first step toward repair. Dr. Guy Winch, in his work on emotional repair, emphasizes that the road to healing begins with validation, not justification. When someone refuses to acknowledge how they've affected you, they're refusing the first step toward genuine resolution, walking away from someone who won't acknowledge. Their impact is accepting that they're incapable of the accountability required for a healthy relationship. Here's what no one tells you about walking away. It doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like failure. It feels like you're the one who gave up, who couldn't make it work, who chose yourself over love. The guilt arrives in waves, especially in quiet moments when you wonder if you overreacted, if you should have tried harder, if you're selfish for prioritizing your peace. But then something shifts. The constant tension in your shoulders begins to ease. You stop bracing for conflict. You notice you're sleeping better, that your stomach doesn't hurt before checking your phone, that you can make plans without the familiar dread. The space where they used to be, the space you thought would feel empty, starts filling with possibility. You remember who you were before you learned to make yourself smaller to accommodate their dysfunction. The Stoics understood that true freedom isn't the absence of difficulty, it's the presence of choice. You cannot choose how others treat you, but you can choose your response. You cannot control whether they respect your boundaries, acknowledge their impact, or support your growth, but you can control whether you continue exposing yourself to their refusal to do these things. Walking away is the ultimate exercise of that control. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of alignment between who you are and how you live. This choice to walk away from relationships that violate that alignment isn't easy. It's excruciating. It means facing the grief of what you wanted the relationship to be while accepting what it actually is. It means sitting with uncertainty about whether you made the right choice, while trusting that protecting yourself is never wrong. It means redefining family, loyalty, and love in terms that honor your humanity instead of erasing it. The turning point isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's the moment you realize that you deserve relationships that feel like coming home, not like preparing for battle. It's understanding that some people will never give you what you need, and that staying won't change them. It will only change you in ways you don't want to be changed. The bravest thing you can do isn't endure, it's leave. Start by documenting patterns rather than isolated incidents. Keep a simple journal noting interactions that leave you feeling drained, disrespected, or diminished. After a month, review it. Patterns become undeniable when written down. Set one clear boundary and observe the response. Don't announce that you're setting boundaries or explain your entire philosophy. Just state a simple limit: I can't talk after 9 p.m., or I need a week's notice before visits, and notice what happens. Their response will tell you everything you need to know about whether the relationship can evolve. For practical support, consider Set Boundaries. Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tolwab, which offers concrete scripts for difficult conversations. The therapy app BetterHelp provides accessible counseling for navigating family estrangement. Dr. Lindsay Gibson's Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents helps identify patterns you might have normalized. Create a support system outside the relationship before you exit it. Walking away is harder when you're isolated. Build connections with people who respect you, therapists who understand family dynamics, or communities of others who've made similar choices. Finally, give yourself permission to grieve what you're losing, even if what you're losing was harmful. You're not just walking away from the relationship that exists, you're letting go of the relationship you hoped it could become. That deserves to be mourned. Won't I regret this when they're gone? Maybe. But you'll also regret the years you spent depleting yourself trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Both scenarios involve regret. Choose the one that protects your peace. What if they change? People can change, but you cannot base your present well-being on their hypothetical future transformation. If they change meaningfully, sustainably, and demonstrate that change over time, you can reevaluate. But don't set yourself on fire to keep them warm while you wait for them to decide they want to be different. Am I being too harsh? If you're asking this question, you've probably already given far more chances than the situation warranted. People who truly deserve your presence don't make you question whether you're being too harsh for having basic standards. Walking away from family or long-term friends is one of the hardest decisions you'll face. It goes against everything we're taught about loyalty, forgiveness, and the permanence of family bonds. But the Stoics teach us that wisdom sometimes means choosing the difficult right over the easy wrong. You are not obligated to maintain relationships that harm you. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not a failure for recognizing incompatibility. Some relationships cannot be saved because the other person doesn't want to save them. They just want to keep you available for their use. If this resonates with your experience, I encourage you to trust yourself. Start small: one boundary, one honest conversation, one decision made in your own interest rather than someone else's comfort. Notice how it feels to choose yourself. Notice whether they can respect that choice. Let their response guide your next step. Share this if you know someone struggling with a toxic relationship. Sometimes we need permission to do what we already know is right. Your peace matters. Your growth matters. You matter. Thank you for choosing yourself. It's the bravest thing you can do. Asterisk.